Kirsten, hello, lovely. How are you doing? Are you ready to go? Brilliant. In that case, I will be passing you over to our first speaker, Kirsten Dykes. She's a clinical fellow here in Bristol Children's Hospital and is doing an induction day as we speak to other junior fellows, but has taken the time to do this talk for us. So thank you so much, Kirsten, and enjoy the talk, everyone.
Lovely. Cool. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So yeah, guys, thank you, Sophia, for your introduction. Yeah, in one of those standard well-being things, I'm kind of slightly been in two places at once this morning already. So I'm centering myself down. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I am really excited to share with you the material that we're going to be looking at this morning. That's me. I'm a paediatric registrar for my sins. I've been involved in ward for the last couple of years, actually. And in terms of what got me into wellbeing, I was reflecting on kind of why I got into all this stuff in the first place. And I basically had a couple of really tricky jobs, like back to back, and during my SHO years as a PEDS trainee, and thought, gosh, what do I need to be doing to be able to come to work every day in a good place and to be able to Vina, you can start annotating now. And to be able to show up at home as well in a good place while still doing this job. So before we start, I would just like to ask you. Okay. I think annotating may mean that I can't move slides. So I think someone's asked if they can annotate my slides, but I might need to stop that. Have you come across this before? We'll go from there.
I haven't. Let me just.
It's fine. I think I managed to turn it off. I'm sorry, whoever you are who was keen to annotate. Hopefully, just a pen and paper will be grand. But yeah, guys, I don't know about you, but as I say, I've had quite a frenetic morning getting onto Zoom. And often, I think with Zoom conferences, sometimes we're in a shared office, sometimes, and we're kind of like squeezing it in between breaks. Sometimes we're at home and we've got a screaming toddler. I just want to give you just a couple of minutes to think, why are you here? What is the reason that you signed up for this half day? Is it for you? And I think a lot of us would be able to identify that about 2020 potentially being a tricky year. But actually for some of us, maybe actually it's, I'm here for a colleague or I'm here for a friend who I really want to help. Maybe it's that currently things are really tricky and you're feeling kind of right up kind of against it, or actually are things going okay at the moment, but you really want some fuel to kind of yourself and to keep yourself going in the future when things get more rocky. So I'm just going to, throughout this, just give you a little beautiful mountain picture to think about, to look at as you're thinking about different questions I've asked you. And the other question I wanted to ask you this morning is just kind of, where are you at, kind of emotionally, physically, mentally this morning? If you were your mobile phone battery, are you at 99% or are you at 2%? And again, just I think when life's just been busy and you've been just rocketing along, sometimes it's just really good to take just 30 seconds and just think, where am I actually at? Cool. So guys, well-being, I mean, massive topic, right? So what I'd like to do today is to share with you probably my kind of 3 biggest paradigm shifts in the last kind of 3 years or so, as I've been kind of on this well-being journey and learning and growing. There is so much great stuff out there. We could talk for days. I mean, this conference is 3 half days and we still haven't finished all of it. So tons to think about. But I'm really excited about the particular things we're going to share because genuinely they've changed my life too. But before we do that, we'll probably need to think about not just why are each of us here individually, but why are we here as a group? Why is a well-being conference for doctors even a thing? And you probably don't need me to tell you that the NHS probably isn't very well at the moment. I mean, these stats are from the GMC report from 2019, Caring for Doctors, Caring for Patients. 40, nearly 40% of trainees saying that they were unwell because of stress in the preceding year in 2018. 50% of trainees and 46% of trainers reporting high or very high levels of burnout in 2019. We know that the GP stats and the ED stats are even higher. And we also know that actually doctors with really high levels of burnout have a 45, 65, 63% higher chance of making a medical error in the next 3 months. So actually this is really important stuff, and it makes a difference to us and also makes a difference to our patients. But I guess the question is, why are we at this situation where 50% of doctors are saying that they have very high levels of burnout? Why are we so not well? And this was a report from the BMA, again, done in 2019, where they basically did a series of kind of in-depth interviews with doctors from a really wide variety of backgrounds. And they said, what's going on? Why are things difficult? And I'm not going to read the list, but I don't know about you. If I read through that list, there's plenty of things that I could identify are true in my current job. Most things were true in my previous job and the job before that and the job before that. And I want to argue actually that maybe the reason that all those things are true, we haven't set out to make an NHS that's broken. But actually we've been trying so hard to make the NHS as efficient as possible that we have squeezed people's time. We've squeezed the resources in the hospital so that there are, no study rooms left, no restrooms left, and we've squeezed the time that we have with patients to the point that we have maybe no time to be human anymore. So to illustrate this, this is my brother-in-law's head on a stick, and basically I made a bunch of these for my sister's hen do, which was a few years ago now. And decorated the hen do picnic with it, which is slightly bizarre. But my sister recently found one of these, the last one, like sitting in a drawer, and sent me a picture of it. I just actually, as I was preparing this talk, thought such a good image of actually what, as doctors, the system sometimes does to us now. It says, hey, you're a decision-making machine. You're a head on a stick. And actually, the system forgets. And sometimes because of that, we forget that actually we're human beings. We've got bodies and we need to rest. We've got hearts and souls, and actually caring and having time to be cared for is really important. That there's more to us than just a head on a stick. So as I was thinking about my 3 paradigm shifts, I realized that they kind of maybe talk to each part of conceptually what it means to be human. So as we go through, what I'm going to share is something about the fact that we've got bodies, and actually, therefore, kind of our physiological states really matter. And what I mean by that, I'll share with you in a lot more detail. But also the fact that actually we're social animals as humans, that we need each other. But actually, this really exciting idea that stress can make us more social rather than, and that we're spiritual, or we need meaning, and actually this, again, really interesting idea that potentially meaning actually maybe helps us create resilience in ourselves and others. So first of all, physiological states, because as humans we've got bodies. So I don't know if any of you guys have come across Paul Gilbert's kind of physiological states idea before. Paul Gilbert is a professor of psychology. He's done huge amounts of work on this. Actually, if you have time and are interested, well worth going away and looking at his work in more detail. He does a whole body of work around what he calls the tricky brain or the tricky mind, thinking kind of evolutionarily about kind of the brain that we've been left with as modern humans, quite an ancient brain, and how that can trip us up. So loads of really interesting ideas. The one I'm just going to share with you, just one, which is this physiological states idea, which basically says humans exist in three main states. So we exist in a threat state when we're feeling threatened, and we exist in a drive state where we're achieving and looking for goals, and we exist in the soothe state. And I mean, to be honest, so far it's so much just human physiology that you'd recognise from medical school. So threat, we're talking about kind of fight or flight, we're talking adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, fight, flight, freeze, hyper alerts, scanning for danger, and the point of that is to keep you safe. So it doesn't feel very pleasant, but actually really, really important. And still in the current era, an important part of our psychology, but has a high sensitivity and a poor specificity, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go along. So that's threat. Then we move on to the drive system, and that's our kind of dopamine, nucleus accumbens, other bits in the brain, which I've forgotten from my neuroanatomy from back in the day. But we're talking about goal-directed behavior here. We're saying this is the system that, in an animal, we're talking about really basic drives of finding food, finding a mate, protecting young, building a nest, those sorts of things. And actually, as humans, we're talking about the things that sometimes it's just basic shelter, food, those sorts of things. But a lot of the time for us, it's status, it's money, it's I want to get that job, I want to change the world that way. This is the kind of system that feels great. This is when you're getting things done. And we all know that dopamine makes you feel fabulous. But again, there can be a bit of a dark side to drive sometimes, and we'll come back to that in a sec. And our final system is the soothe system. This is parasympathetic, this is rest and digest. Paul Gilbert kind of actually expands it a little bit and says, actually, as humans, we're not just resting and digesting when we're in that parasympathetic mode, though. That's really basic. Actually, more than that, this is the state that we're in when we're giving care and receiving care. We're with the people who are closest to us and who we care about the most and who care about us. It's when we feel safe and when we feel nurtured. And it's actually the time when we meet our own needs as well. We can kind of settle to the point where we can say, actually, I'm not feeling great about that thing. How can I kind of be self-compassionate as well? So why, as I say, so far medical physiology, why is this so interesting? So Paul Gilbert has a couple of really useful ideas that I found really kind of unlock things for me. So the first is to say threat, because it's so evolutionarily important, is very easy to trigger. So we've got a system that has evolved to keep us safe, and it's done that really, really effectively by being as paranoid as possible about the things that might harm us. And at the same time, it's not very good as a system about distinguishing between internal threats and external threats. And Gilbert puts that all together and says, your threat system is at real danger of confusing important real threats in the outside world, real dangers to you, a bus approaching you at high speed, your boss yelling at you, with internal things about ideas that you have about what might be threatening that may not even be true. And it means that you can be sitting on a day off, I don't know, up a lovely hill, overlooking a nice view with your nearest and dearest, no deadlines, nothing pressing, and then you can have a thought about, man, I'm really not doing enough at work, I'm really not achieving, actually, I don't think I'm going to get that next job that I want, or that next post, or pass that next interview, or oh, that colleague is so much better than me, or that colleague, I think they maybe hate me, and actually it puts you straight into threats, even despite your external circumstances not having changed. So Gilbert says, actually, as modern people, we spend a huge amount of time in threat unnecessarily. And he links that on to drive, to say, actually, the way that we try and escape that is generally to try and achieve to feel better. And that makes sense. Again, that's a really sensible approach, in that we have a threat and we want to build a solution. We want to build a way through. And for example, if that might be that I'm worried about not matching up, I'm going to work harder to try and do that extra, squeeze that extra audit in, or do the extra work project, do the extra presentation. But actually, he says this ultimately is flawed. If we live our whole lives in threat and drive, drive works for a while, feels great, you're on that dopamine high, until, because of your limitations, because you're a human being, you can't keep achieving every time, and something goes wrong, at which point you just get dumped straight back into threat again, which pushes you back into drive, which pushes you back into threat, which obsessively pushes you back into drive. I don't know if you've met the doctor who's obsessed with their next 10K PB. They're getting their 10th systematic review published, and everything is a competition. And actually, Paul Gilbert would say that our world has set us up to live in that loop, but it's a really exhausting loop. And as that happens, soothe gets forgotten. So what I'd love you guys to do is just take 2 or 3 minutes. Actually, this might be really helpful if you've got a pen and paper. You don't have to, you can do this as a mental exercise, but it can be really powerful just writing down, thinking about the activities that you do in an average week or just generally in life. What circles do they predominantly put you in? Now, obviously, every activity, depending on how you approach it, could put you in lots of different ones. For you, when you're engaging in that activity, which circle are you normally in? And then kind of an extension exercise, if you think about how much time you spend in each of those circles, and you drew them proportional to the time you spend in each state, what would that look like? Everyone happy with that? So sorting the activities of your life into which kind of physiological state they put you in, whether that's threat, drive, or soothe. And then thinking just how much of your life proportion do you tend to spend in each of those circles. And here's a picture of a mountain. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes. Fabulous. So you may not have totally finished that, and everyone's lives are very complicated. But I would just like to ask, what did you notice as you did that exercise? And if anyone's happy to just type in the chat, for example, or feel free to unmute yourself and yell out. I normally find it easier to type in the chat. Alexa, thank you. So lots of threat and not a lot of soothe. Yeah. Anyone else? Probably only 1 hour max soothe time a day, same lots of threats, a bit of crossover between threat and drive. Yeah, absolutely, Rosie, that's really true. Find it easier to identify the threats and drive, not so much soothe, lots of drive. Thanks, Darren. Yeah, absolutely. So guys, I'll share with you, I mean, this is work gives me a feeling of threat way too often. Yeah, thank you, Anna. And thanks for being, and lots of drive in my relaxing time. Carly, see you guys, you don't even need me to do this exercise with you. So this was my kind of mock-up of my circles. Now, obviously, my life is significantly more complicated and there should be more things in there, but I basically got bored typing. But I think for a lot of us, we would say work tends to kind of bounce us between threat and drive. Emergencies, kind of high threats, high stakes, but then you manage them and you end up in drive thinking, as a team, we looked after that patient, we did that really well. Or actually things go really badly wrong, and thankfully it doesn't happen very often, but when that does, that's such a sense of threat to who you are. Am I a good doctor? Are we a good team? Did I mess that up? What's that family going to say? So lots of threat, lots of drive within work. But like you, I actually realised that quite a lot of my activities that I was doing outside of church, I'm using a past tense. So I did this exercise in a deanery day run by a couple of clinical psychologists. So it was run the whole Severn deanery, doctors from every single different background, all junior doctors. And we did this in small groups. Absolutely fascinating, because basically all of us looked like we had these two massive threat and drive circles, and then this little P of a soothe bubble at the top. And as I was reflecting on that exercise, then I realized loads of the activities that I did outside of work that I thought were day off activities, leading church groups, kind of running, climbing, actually, sometimes hanging out with that really competitive friend. Actually, they were more in the drive and sometimes in the threat zone, even though I thought that I was having time off. And actually, I started to think, no wonder I get to the end of a day off or a weekend and think, I'm exhausted. And I used to say to my friends, I'm exhausted, but I can't be because I, had a whole day off. And then start to realize that actually what's important is not just that you have time physically not working, but actually how much time was I myself sit in soothe. And so I want to ask you another question, and I think this is probably the most powerful question that they asked us in that workshop, was just how could you shift the balance in your life, even just a tiny bit more towards the soothe state? So whether that's actually, nothing wrong with running, I love running, but whether that is just maybe swapping out one hardcore run a week for a gentle walk somewhere beautiful with somebody you really care about, whether that actually is changing activity at all, or whether that is literally just saying, hey, do you know what? When I'm off, I'm not going to think about work projects, or whether I'm going to give myself, a day a week where I don't think about whether I'm matching up, whether I'm meeting standards, and throw myself back into that threat drive cycle. I'm just going to say, actually, this is my soothe day. This is the day that I get to relax and just recharge. And again, I'm just going to give you just a couple of minutes, well, a few seconds to think about that. If you've got a pen and paper, it's really powerful. Write that down on the back of the piece of paper you wrote your circles on. It helps your brain remember it and take it on board. Lovely. So we've talked in our first section about getting into soothe and the importance of just doing stuff that actually just helps us regulate our physiology, because we are humans who've got bodies, we're not just brains on sticks. So our next section is talking about our hearts, and that's our metaphorical hearts. And we're going to talk about stress and the fact that actually maybe it doesn't always have to drive us apart from people. Maybe it can make us more social. But first, a poll. So guys, if you get your phones out and scan this QR code, that's probably the easiest way for you to get to this poll. If not, you can log on to menti.com kind of manually and type in the code. My parents have absolutely terrible eyesight, and so they said that they literally couldn't read the code unless I made it that big. I think that probably as sensibly aged humans, actually, you'll be fine with that. But yeah. Is everyone ready? And then, oh look, we got 4 responses already, 9 responses. It's very exciting. The question is, do you think that stress in general makes people more or less other-oriented? Any more for any more? 29, look at this. Oh, we've got 2 people, I love this, who are backing the trend. Fabulous. I'm going to give just another kind of 10 seconds or so. But yeah, and thanks, Sophia, for just putting that Menti code in the chat again. That's really helpful. Fabulous. So guys, I'm gonna move on. Oh, we've got even more. This is very exciting. I'm sure. So Chanda, again, I'm sorry. I'm just going to decline the request to have remote control of the application because it basically means I can't present properly. I apologise. Lovely. So I think in general, what you guys have said is what most of us would say. And I think there's good evidence that a lot of the time stress does make us kind of narrower and less altruistic in our mindset. But what I'd like to share with you next is a bit of a TED talk that when I first saw it just absolutely blew my mind. It's by a health psychologist called Kelly McGonigal, and she's going to be talking about stress. We're going to start halfway through, so I'm just going to get it into the right speed.
Now, I said I have over a decade of demonizing stress to redeem myself from. So we are going to do one more intervention. I want to tell you about one of the most underappreciated aspects of the stress response. And the idea is this: stress makes you social. To understand the side of stress, we need to talk about a hormone, oxytocin. And I know oxytocin has already gotten as much hype as a hormone can get. It even has its own cute nickname, the cuddle hormone, because it's released when you hug someone. But this is a very small part of what oxytocin is involved in. Oxytocin is a neurohormone. It fine-tunes your brain's social instincts. It primes you to do things that strengthen close relationships. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your friends and family.
Kirsten, my love, the video's just paused, so it stopped playing on our side. Do you want me to set it up from my computer here? If you want it, just stick your thumbs up. Okay. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. We're just going to. Now, Kirsten, could I ask at what point were you at? Kirsten, could I ask what minutes you were at? Are you messaging me? Sorry. No. Bear with me a moment. 9 minute 50. I'll restart it from here.
roles in your body is to protect your cardiovascular system from the effects of stress. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It also helps your blood vessels stay relaxed during stress. But my favorite effect on the body is actually on the heart. Your heart has receptors for this hormone. And oxytocin helps heart cells regenerate and heal from any stress-induced damage. This stress hormone strengthens your heart. And the cool thing is that all of these physical benefits of oxytocin are enhanced by social contact and social support. So when you reach out to others under stress, you release more of this hormone, your stress response becomes healthier, and you actually recover faster from stress. I find this amazing that your stress response has a built-in mechanism for stress resilience. And that mechanism is human connection. I want to finish by telling you about one more study. And listen up, because this study could also save a life. This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States, and they ranged in age from 34 to 93. And they started the study by asking, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, how much time have you spent helping out friends, neighbors, people in your community? And then they used public records for the next 5 years to find out who died. Any stressful life experience, like financial difficulties or family crisis, that increased the risk of dying by 30%. But, and I hope you are expecting a but by now, but that wasn't true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. Caring created resilience. And so we see once again that the harmful effects of stress on your health are not inevitable. How you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Experiences in my life, but this science has given me a whole new appreciation for stress. Stress gives us access to our hearts. The compassionate heart that finds joy and meaning in connecting with others. And yes, your pounding physical heart working so hard to give you strength and energy. And when you choose to view stress in this way, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges. And you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone. Thank you.
I mean, this is kind of amazing what you're telling us. It seems amazing to me that a belief about stress can make so much difference in life expectancy.
Cool. Sorry about that. And guys, thank you, Sophia, for just stepping in there. So I just suddenly, everything just went into the wheel of death. So I couldn't unmute myself to say hi and couldn't fix anything. But Sophia has sorted things out, so thank you. So hopefully the disruption didn't bother you just too much. But oh my goodness, is that not an amazing idea that actually, yes, stress and, it's what we're talking about in that threat, drive, soothing. When we're in threat, actually, we're driven away from people and we're kind of so focused on our own needs that we don't reach out. But actually, that doesn't have to be the way that it is. And actually, I want to argue that the response that we saw to the first wave of the pandemic is exactly this social stress response. The entire country were stressed up to their eyeballs, but actually the way that it came out was in thanks, in gratefulness, in pulling together as a community. And yes, that felt like a very unusual and unique circumstance. But actually, I want to ask, can we build a different NHS? An NHS that is like that all the time, where actually when we're stressed, that we reach out to a team member and share that stress and gain support. Or even better, when we're stressed, we look around and see who else is stressed and try and use our own stress to offer them support. And this would be the surgeon who, unlike the stereotype, rather than throwing a strop when things are going wrong, turns to the rest of his team and says, things aren't great, I need your help. And actually, if we can build that sort of NHS, then it'll be a safer NHS for everyone. So we're not going to change the NHS in a day. We're not even probably going to change the NHS in a year. But there's a bunch of us on this call. And actually, we know that incivility breeds incivility. And we know that bad behaviour is infectious. But actually, kindness is viral too. And what I wanted to say to us all today, and I'm absolutely including myself in this group, is let's start where we are. Let's use what we have. Let's do what we can, because actually each of us each day can make a little shift in how we respond to our own stress. And as we do that, we build a new culture. So guys, I'd love to give you just again a little chance just to think about how you could apply that. So think of a stressful experience that happens in your job. It doesn't have to be a big one that happens day to day, but what small positive choice could you make to use that to help that stress to help you connect, whether it's with a team member, a patient, a relative, rather than being pushed away from them. And I'll just give you some mountain time to think. Lovely. Oh, sorry, Zoe, you're saying, can I please say the question again? Yes, absolutely. So the question was, well, let's just go back to it, that's probably easier. I can leave that up instead of the mountains, slightly less calming. But thinking of a stressful experience that happens often in your job, what small positive choice could you make to help you use that stress to connect with someone rather than kind of shutting down? So maybe that's actually you're doing a cannula for a 2-year-old and that's stressful, and the 2-year-old's stressed and the parents are stressed and you're stressed and it's a difficult cannula. But actually, for example, could you say to the nurse that's going to give you a hand, sorry, I can tell I'm a paediatrician here, actually I'm feeling a bit stressed about this cannula, do you think you could come give me a hand? And actually, I find if I do that, actually we go in as a team, whereas if I don't share that at the beginning, sometimes they feel like they're an appendage, like they're just a human accessory that's helping me, a tool to help me do my job. But actually, if you go in together saying, this could be really tricky, let's do this together, then actually you build team rather than kind of breaking down team. Does that make sense? I'll just give you 30 seconds then. Cool. Thanks, Lee. And so guys, if you enjoyed that little bit of that TED Talk, I can highly recommend this book. It's called The Upside of Stress, written by Kelly McGonigal. She's written a couple of others as well that I haven't read, but this is just full of really excellent, intriguing psychological research that will kind of flip your mindset on stress. actually the next section of the talk is taking and adapted a bit of it from this book as well. But yeah, available at all good booksellers near you. Clearly try not to buy it on Amazon. So that section was us talking about how stress can actually make us social, help us connect with our metaphorical hearts and the hearts of those around us. For our final section, we're going to talk about how meaning can give us resilience. And this is a section, sorry for my excited little halo, just trying to work out how to represent kind of spiritual something or other, but whatever your philosophical approach, you don't have to believe that humans actually have a spirit to agree that humans, we just need to know that what we're doing matters. So guys, I'm going to give you a little thought exercise. Don't worry, so unfortunately no mountain time for this one, because I think you will need to have the two scenarios in front of you. But I'd like you just to think about these two scenarios. Both of them, I think people would rate as fairly stressful, maybe even the same amount of stress. But I'd like you to think about kind of how stressful they are and whether there's a difference in the quality of stress you would experience in each of these situations. So the first situation is not being able to give a sick patient the care they need because the computer system keeps glitching. You spend 40 minutes on hold to IT and only to be yelled at by the IT guy when you get through. And then your senior is like, why have you been wasting your time and neglecting your patient faffing around on that computer? Okay, that's situation one. And then situation two is, it's Friday afternoon, it's 4 p.m, and you are moving heaven and earth to make sure that you can discharge a dying patient home to be where they want to be to die. You're pulling in district nurses, you're making phone calls, you're chatting to relatives, you're making sure that that patient in the middle of it all gets listened to, gets cared for, and it is frenetic. So just think about those two situations. And then maybe when you've had a bit of time to think, if you're happy to share in the chat any reflections about kind of maybe just the quality of what your stress is like in each situation. Anyone happy to share any reflections on any of the differences in how that stress feels? Emily, you said the second situation feels emotionally drained, but at least you go home knowing you've done the right thing and made a difference. Yeah, absolutely. One is frustration, two is worth it. Yeah, thanks, Brandon. I lose track of being home on time and then end up being late for home, which is stressful in situation two. Yeah, I can understand that. Situation two is overwhelming as the burden lies with you and it has to be done then. Not working as a team towards a common goal in situation one. One feels that you have no control over any of it, despite trying to do your best. Yeah, guys, thank you. So you pulled out a ton of different things there about how we experience stress. Even more, great. Both situations have happened to me and made me feel inadequate multiple times, but came out of stress because of team help, to be honest. Yeah, the first is frustration as out of your control. Guys, thank you so much for all these really excellent comments in the chat. I think, there's tons of different things that affect how we experience stress. And for example, whether you feel like you're in it as a team, whether you feel like you've got control or not, something around autonomy. The situations that are around your work. So talking about if you need to be at home for looking after someone or childcare or just needing to get home, then actually things that kind of force you to be at work longer can be really stressful. But I think the thing about the purpose or the meaningfulness is also really, really important. I think, when I've been in similar situations to situation two, yes, it's been really stressful, but there's also been almost like a flow state where you just think, actually, I'm working for something that really matters. And actually sometimes then you can feel a little bit energized. And actually, interestingly, it's not just something that we feel intuitively when we consider those two situations. Research shows that the meaning really, really matters. Psychologists talk about something called bigger than self goals, and that's making a difference for others, kind of changing your little corner of the world to make it a better place in some way. Even just the success of a team in whatever project it is, rather than just your own success. And it seems to be that actually it provides a protective effect against the negative aspects of stress. In fact, so these are a few little extracts from different pieces of research. Bigger than self goals have been shown to actually make people feel more hopeful, more curious, caring, grateful, inspired, and excited, all things that I would love to feel on an average day at work. But interestingly, also it reduces your risk of depression, and it improves your job satisfaction and well-being, protects you against burnout, which sounds like 50% of trainees in the NHS really need. It improves your performance on things as drastically different as being a candidate at a job interview, and the performance of businesses after a financial crash. And it actually changes our own physiology and reduces the intensity of our threat response. You can literally measure people's hormones when you ask them to think about bigger than self goals and then put them in the same stressful situation. Their cortisol levels rise less. I'm not saying that all we need is a bigger than self goal and then the IT system and everything else is fine. There's plenty of bad stress in the NHS, and IT systems breaking down or people being rude are absolutely not the things that we want to say are fine. And actually, we want to work as hard as we can to try and eliminate them. But while we're waiting, maybe we can think about just trying to connect with the meaning of our stress, even in situations like situation one. Because actually in situation one, there was a patient who was unwell at the centre of that. And I suspect that some people will naturally be able to connect with that meaning when they're struggling with having to log in for the 10th time and being 8th in the queue on the phone to IT. And some of us will naturally just be less able to make that connection without effort. But actually we can all train ourselves to do that. And so that's my encouragement to you, is to look for the meaning in your stress. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I struggle to think about what my bigger than self goals are. Sometimes it's really obvious, it's served up to you on a plate, here's a sick patient that you need to make better. But sometimes it can be harder, and it can be harder to work out what the bigger than self goals that connect with your inner values are. And these are 4 questions that psychologists suggest you could ask yourself to really work out what your bigger than self goals are in your life, in a way that can be focused on work, but can also be broader than work and apply to situations that are completely not related. So I'm going to leave these up here for a bit. And I'm going to ask you to think about one situation that you've come across recently that really frustrated or stressed you out at work. And just think, how is that situation an opportunity to serve those goals? Again, I'm going to give you a few minutes. I'll leave this slide up just because there's quite a lot of different questions on it and lots of words, and I think it'll be helpful for you to be able to refer to. But I'll just give you a few minutes to think about that. So guys, I'm going to move away from this slide now. If you do want to screenshot it before I do, I think these questions are ones that to be honest, I really want to go and spend a bit more time thinking about. They're massive questions, and I think questions that's worth asking ourselves just every so often. So maybe ones to, go stick on your wall or put in a drawer or something, so that you just find it every so often again and go, oh yeah, what change is it that I want to create in the next 6 months, in the next year, in my family life, at home, in my garden, in the UN, whichever of those things. So guys, a summary. Thank you guys so much for listening. What we've been talking about is thinking about well-being from a whole person point of view. And I apologise to my brother-in-law. I think he knows I've used his photograph. I'm still not entirely sure. I have warned his wife. But so there's his name's Stuart. There's Stuart with his body, heart, and spirit all on fire for well-being. In summary, lots of things that NHS need to change, and I am absolutely not wanting to minimise them. And actually, some of us on this call might have a ton of control over those things, but I think a lot of us don't have a lot at the moment, and that may well change as we go through our careers. And I absolutely want to encourage each of us to take every opportunity that we have to build culture and to change the big things. But whether we have a small amount of control or a lot of control, we can all make choices that acknowledge the reality of our humanness, of the fact that we have bodies, the fact that we are social animals and connection matters, the fact that we have a deep need for meaning. And those choices will help us find more well-being. Guys, I'm going to open up the chat for questions, and then I've just got one final exercise to leave you with after that. So any questions?
Kirsten, what an amazing talk. Thank you so much. Guys, please do write your answer in this presentation and in this day. We really want you to try and get as much out of it, so we want you to ask questions and interact with us as much as you like.
So, Sophia, what I might do is just introduce this final exercise so people can be typing things in the chat as they come up to them as well. Come up to them? Occur to them, that's what I mean. So my final challenge to you guys, and you have been so great, thank you so much for all your contributions in the chat, for all the time you spent thinking, for listening to me, putting up with our tech problems. What I would love you to do is just think of one thing that you're going to take away from this talk that you're going to do in the next week. Because research shows that if you choose to do something, write it down and commit to it, and that you take action and you make your kind of a target to take action in a specified amount of time, you're much more likely to do it. And so whether it's, I'm actually going to do some yoga, because you know what, actually yoga really helps me soothe. And you know what, that's a really easy one to sign up for, because there's yoga next. Is it next? Or yeah, yoga next.
One after.
So stick around by the morning, you'll have done your commitment already. But equally, it might actually be, I want to go away and take those 4 questions about what are my bigger than self goals, and just spend some time really connecting with them, and then thinking about how I can connect with those bigger than self goals to my work. So one of those things, write it down, tell someone. That also helps you actually kind of do your commitment, and maybe it will change your life. Great. We've got some stuff in the chat now. Thank you. So we've got.
Shall I can read out the questions for you, if you like, Kirsten.
Fabulous.
So from Emily Burns, wanting to make changes, especially when people find you are keen and proactive, can get involved with more things than asked to help. So I guess the question is, how do you balance things?
Yeah, I mean, really great question, and I think a lot of people, a lot of junior doctors can really identify with that. I think one thing I would say is collaborate. Find some other friends who are interested in the same stuff. Because however keen and motivated you are, you can achieve 100 times as much with other people. But also, actually, partly there's all that social aspect of stress thing that actually you're sharing your stress, sharing your challenge. It's protective for you, but also actually it allows you to take the pressure off each other. And I mean, this conference, for example, is a really good example of something that none of us could have pulled off by ourselves, but we put a bunch of people together who are all motivated, love wellbeing, love junior doctors, and this happened. So yeah, find your people, make a network, and go from there.
At the end of the day, we'll be talking about how you can potentially join Ward later on as well. So that will be a good start. There's lots of questions coming up now. So Jasmine said, thank you for the talk, that it's definitely going to change her practice. From Liz McClellan, thinking about my time and my circles, making sure my soothe time is actually relaxing. Emily asked, is it possible to see the slides? We will be we are recording all of this, so you'll be able to get access to it at a later point. So from Alexa Warnes, I just wonder if you have any pearls of wisdom about how to apply this philosophy when working hours are so long. I feel like I can be a good doctor working 37 hours a week, but when it starts creeping up to 50 plus, it can be hard not to feel
Yeah, I mean, really challenging. And I think I would say, the ones of us, people who are presenting on this conference, we're not experts, as in we haven't got everything right. We're living in that system too. And if you're working, 50 or more hours a week, if that's on average, then obviously that's more than your European Working Time Directive should be allowing. So there's something in the system there that's broken and that needs challenging. And it may be actually that you need to have a discussion with your seniors and use mechanisms like exception reporting to make sure that kind of issue is highlighted. I think practically there are some things that we can do that help, even if you acknowledge that the situation isn't how it should be. And certainly also, all of us at times will work more than 50 hours because we're doing a crazy run and, they're regularly doing a 72-hour week when you're on a bad section of the rota. Things that help then, I think that soothe idea is really useful, actually saying, I don't have much time off at the moment this week, so how can I just build in half an hour or even 15 minutes to do something that's really actively soothing? And so some activities that people find particularly helpful for that are mindfulness exercises. So you can find an app like Headspace or Calm, there's tons of them out there, or something like yoga, where even if you do 10, 15, 20 minutes, it can really shift your body and brain into that kind of soothe state, and it's actually much more restful. And it's much more time efficient than sitting watching Netflix. So that would be one tip. And I think trying to make time to see people who really know and love you, again, those are the things where that's going to be really restorative to you. And I think a bit of self-compassion as well. Actually, a lot of us expect that if we're working a 72-hour week, we'll still manage to cook, nutritious meals every night, go for 4 runs in the week, look after your child absolutely perfectly as a saintly human who is never mean to never kind of gets annoyed or anything. And actually, we're humans. And so taking the pressure off and saying, actually, this is a tricky week. Maybe I'm going to batch cook beforehand and have things in the freezer, or even eat a microwave meal. It's not the worst thing in the world. But I'm just going to take the pressure off myself and therefore be able to have more time to kind of just be. Hopefully that's helpful. Don't know if you have any ideas, Sophia, as well.
What you've said, and making sure that you just have, even if it's sort of 10 minutes on the loo, or just have a moment every day just where you can sort of sit and take it in and reassess yourself. So there's I say on the loo because I have a 15-month-old that follows me everywhere. So it's really important to just, even it doesn't really matter where you are, but just give yourself a pat on the back because you're brilliant for just carrying on, especially if you're working 70 odd hours a week. So, and some weeks we will be, and some weeks we burn out. And so you just need to stop and listen to yourself. There's a few more questions, but we are heading into the tea break. So from Fran Heffman, remember to reach out to others when stressful situations at work. They are likely finding it hard too. That's really good. And try not to see stress as a negative flaw. That's really good. From Omar Benazir, thank you so much for a brilliant talk. I'm going to shift my stress response from thinking pros and cons and having some more time to connect more with people who are in the same boat. Very good. From Neil C, great talk, Kirsten. We'll be adding a dedicated Soothes Day to my week.
Love it.
Yes, please use the hashtag Ward 2020 if you'd like to tweet about us, because the more tweeting, the better. Although I still don't know what the use of Twitter is. It's always fun to share. So, from Vladas, isn't making meaning just attempt to escape a cruel reality where there is no meaning at all? So just a self-lie. I think there are many ways to interpret stress. What would you say, Kirsten? That's quite a difficult question, I would say, to answer.
I mean, it's a question that's embedded in kind of your philosophy about life. I think, as I said, I think whatever our philosophy about life is, and we all come from different places, I do think that making another human, connecting with another human being and helping them feel cared for is a good thing. And I think most of us will probably agree, even if your lens says that there maybe isn't more behind that. And I think I probably come from a lens where I would be able to put that into a bigger context. But even if you can't, actually, do you know what? If your biggest meaning is making another human being feel loved and cared for, that is huge. And I think it's not a big leap, I don't think, to go from anything that we do in our jobs. We're so lucky with that, to go from anything in our jobs to a human being. It's a very short path normally to making a human being feel cared for.
And I think it's the reality of your own thoughts and perceptions is something that you develop on yourself. So what may be a cruel reality to you is actually a beautiful reality to others. And so it's really important to try and take different views of the world. And hopefully in time, a cruel reality will become a kind reality to you as well. I think we're going to wrap up there. So thank you so much, Kirsten. That was an absolutely brilliant talk. And Emily Burns said there are free apps, including Headspace. That's very true. At the end of today, we'll be sending out a booklet with a huge amount of resources and time and effort that has been spent by our speakers and the rest of the ward team, giving you a huge directory of avenues to seek further support. I'm going to now be setting up the posters that were submitted. And please have a look at the next following talks that will be starting at 10:30. So on stream 1, we've got Positive Psychology by Phoebe Simmons, who is a life coach and psychologist. On stream 2, we'll have Passion is Sleep. And on stream 3, we've got Nidra Restore, which is a yoga session all about transformative breathing to help with well-being and similar to mindfulness and Headspace. So all 3 talks are well worth watching and we hope you enjoy it. But for now, go grab a cup of tea and do some reading of posters.